Hello, everybody. I was just talking with Margie on the topic that'll come up again later because she sent me pictures about bindweed, and we need happier things to talk about. If you've got any questions or any observations from this week, isn't it nice to be cool again? I actually have a collar on and sleeves. And I think it's wonderful. It's been great being able to work outside and nice. We got rain. I understand some people got a lot of rain, but we got a little, um, and you can tell the plants are appreciating it. The uh, the birds in our neighborhood, in our yard now, they come to the water. This is our um, water from pumped from the pond, pumps water up this tube and down here. And if it goes just out of the tube and falls down about 5 feet, if it falls down, it splashes too much and we lose too much water in the splash out of the pond. So I rigged up this little copper bowl and attached it to the tube so that the water hits the bowl and breaks up into multiple streams. Well, birds and dogs, I know too, prefer to drink upstream, to drink where the water's coming from, which makes complete sense. If you can get further away from where others have fouled the water, that's good. So the birds like to get it from up there. And what they do, especially the goldfinches and the chickadees, is they grab hold of the supports that I've got holding the copper tin up, and they drink the water up there. The other day, Steve saw one actually taking a bath in this little copper tin. So I think,
Yeah, it was a goldfinch that did it. The
yeah,
goldfinch was, yep.
I think for next year, I'll make a bigger copper bowl there, maybe with a couple of holes on the side, and rig it up because that's really neat to see. I
Yeah,
thought I thought they were going to hop around on the rocks in the pond and get water, get their splashes there, and some of them do. I've seen some taking baths down in the shallow parts of the water, but it seems,
they'll drink in the pond, but not when there's a lot of algae.
yeah.
So
Have you
having to
looked
pull
at
it. I've
have
been
you,
trying to pull it out.
okay, yeah. The copper works though. Look, we don't have string algae coming from up there anymore.
Yep.
I had something different. Algae just won't form on copper. Ooh, now that would probably be costly. Make the whole pond out of copper.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't be good for the animals though. Oh, somebody's got a hand up. Is that Margie?
Margaret,
Go ahead,
Margie,
Margie.
whoever.
Whoever. No, don't say whoever. Everybody can talk then. That
Well,
might be,
it's Margaret's iPhone, and there's a bunch of Margarets on our list.
yeah.
So
Oh, okay. Margie, that might,
Okay, I'm here. Yeah,
okay.
I'm sorry. This phone is new and I am not good at it. But
None of us are.
I was just gonna say on September 20, there's a plant exchange. I started to write it in chat at the senior center, and usually we have more plants than we can exchange. So if somebody needs plants, that could be a good place to grab a bunch of plants, and they're
And
usually pretty nice.
is that going
There's
to
a
be
lot
down
of
at the Royal Oak Community Gardens?
No, it's going to be at the Royal Oak Senior Center. It's on
Oh, right,
Marriott's.
right. Okay.
Yeah. September 20th from 9 to 12.
That's a good idea. Maybe as a thank you note to Michelle for having the group over last night, I'll send her a card with some dates and places of all these plant exchanges.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. By the end, we're just like giving them away. And then people how many they bring in, that's how many they could take. But if they don't bring any in, we just go ahead, get what you want. So,
yeah, yeah. Take
okay.
any of these things that are left. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I
Good.
have a hard time going to the mute in the chat. Okay. Bye. Sorry.
We are all mirrors of each other, aren't we?
yep.
We all have.
Not easy at times.
Well, it's the new technology. One of the neighbors who was walking by while I was out in the garden said it's just not designed for us. And it's true, it's certainly not designed for my shaky fingers. But it's not really designed for people who didn't grow up thinking computer. It's not intuitive for us like it is for other people. And
That's
the screens are kind of small. Speaking of kind of small, I think the Tardiva and the Turtlehead are both exhibiting the effects of not enough water this year, because even when it grows, that's going to be a smaller than usual hydrangea tardiva flower.
It looks like it, yes.
Yeah.
But there's may not be as many either this year, but we'll see.
Did I cut it? No, I haven't. I haven't pruned it yet. It's only just begun to take off, and I'll prune it. Maybe I'll prune it next spring. See if I can shape it up a little bit. Um, we
Yeah.
sure did need the water. Sure did need the
Yeah.
rain. I might be able to dig without jumping on the spade with both feet. Part of it's because my legs aren't as strong as they were, and I'm not as coordinated as I was, so I can't cut with one foot quite as well. But it's also because the soil is bone dry.
Yeah.
I wonder if bones really are dry. 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask that those who are joining us make sure your microphone stays off and that your camera is off. That makes it uncluttered on the screen for everybody. But we'd like you to put in your questions anytime, and you can do that in the chat menu. You locate the chat on your menu bar on the Zoom screen, and there's a raise your hand control. The chat, just keep in mind that when you put something into chat, when you hit return, the message pops up to the top. So if you are used to hitting return at the end of what you figure is a line, you're going to break your message up into pieces, and it sometimes gets lost in other people's messages. The reactions menu on your bar has a raise hand control, or it's in the participants menu. Someplace there's a raise hand, and when you raise your hand, your name pops to the top of the alphabetical list out of order, and Steve can see it and tell you once we get to a questions place that you're in line. You can ask a question out loud, which is easier for me than typing it in. So that leaves it to you, Steve.
Good evening and welcome to Free4All Friday. This is our 52nd version or
Okay.
meeting where we welcome all gardeners to come and celebrate growing and cultivate problem solving. I'm Stephen Nicola.
And I'm Janet McConovich, and together we're gardenataz.org. And we love to garden together and can't ever get over listening to the things that you have to say about your gardens and what you observe and spending our time looking things up. That's why we started Garden A to Z, our website, gardenataz.org, and a place where we can put what we've been writing and learning for 40 years and keep on learning more. Because we want to build on what we already know. It got a little bit old when I was writing in the Detroit News and Free Press. It got a little bit old to get the same questions over and over again. I would answer them individually to people if they were repeats, because I wanted to go on to something new. And now we got the website with kind of unlimited space to put things. And we came up with the Free for All Fridays as a way to replace that outlet to people, so that there was a place where people could send us email or they can text us. Our phone number is on the website. You just have to look for it. Or they can come on Fridays to this session. Tell people about it if you would. There's a link that's always there on the Fridays page. And who was it? I think, Steve, I think there's another email that came in asking to be on our list to get the newsletter. And we really probably ought to change the website to say that our newsletter has been supplanted by our Free for All Fridays, because it takes us so much time to put the Free for All Friday together. I'm going to have to work on that a little bit.
I think I did that. We have a draft that explains that when I send in the people that want it. And I
Okay.
pretty sure I sent it back to Diane.
Okay, we'll take a look at that.
Oh, yep. She said that was her today. She's here tonight.
Oh, hi, Diane. Welcome to the group. This is Collinsonia richweed. It's a native plant that grows in moist, probably all the time moist, at least partly shady to very shady soil. I brought one home from a place where in the woods where we walk. Well, I didn't bring the plant home. I brought a cutting home because all of the trees were dying as emerald ash borer killed the ashes, and the big ashes fell down on other things. And it won't live. It will not live in the sun. The only place in our yard where it can live is right at the edge of the pond where the splash reaches it. And Chris, if I didn't give you them already, I still have kept those seedlings up for you. Because if you've got a place where we can put a native plant and actually let it do what it's going to do, it's great. These are just about finished blooming yellow now. But every morning, like clockwork, the hummingbird was there hitting every single flowering stem. Now it's been coming to the blue lobelia. Steve's been
Yeah.
watching.
And you can see the red in the background too. The red lobelia is back there too.
Yeah, it's a perfect hummingbird spot.
Yep.
Okay, so this week it has been so nice to be cool. So nice to have to put a sweatshirt on to come out in the morning. We've been really happy, edgy, because I've been edging a lot, and we're trying to be respectful of what we've got set up here. To explain, I've been edging the garden. I have a rule. I try to follow my own rules. I try to remind myself of my rule. Edge first, weed the edge first. All the weeds in the garden, if it's a garden that you started clean, the only place the weeds are coming from is from the edge. They're creeping in the clover, the grass, the other running roots, or they're leaning in from where they're growing on the edge and dropping seeds in, but they're getting in from the outside edge. This weed hanging over Michelle's hosta, by the way, is a weedy aster, weedy lettuce. And I confused it, and you might have confused it too with this one. I used to call this one corn aster, and found out that it is actually it's called American burnweed, just like fireweed, epilobium, burnweed, Ericstites, comes up in disturbed areas and fills the area. The seed, it makes lots of seed. Those are all the flowers. You've probably seen it in your garden. And I like to know the names of things so that I can curse them more effectively. It makes lots of seeds. And the seeds live a long time in the soil and can wait there until a tree falls down or a fire goes through, and then they're the one that takes over from there. Um, so they're dropping in seeds. And when I'm weeding along the edge and I look into the garden, look further into the garden than I can reach, and I see things like oxalis. This is wood sorrel, common wood sorrel right here, Oxalis stricta. And that is a grapevine, probably deposited there by a bird that was in passing. When I see those, it's very hard for me to stop from crawling into the garden and going after those. And I found that if I do that, the edge doesn't get done, because once you start crawling, you keep crawling. And meanwhile, 6 feet up, there was a crabgrass growing on the edge, and its long arms, which would root if they could touch the ground. The long arms of this one, though, had threaded their way through purple coneflowers and over the tops of pasque and those seeds developing at the tips of the plant of the branches live 20 years in the soil or more. And they were going to drop those seeds further in. Now, they won't germinate in the shade, but you make a bare space by, say, taking out another plant or pulling a weed out next to it, and all of those crabgrass seeds go, oh, warm soil, sun.
That's all. They are quite the example of how you can spread by seed
Yeah.
even quicker than by runners of root that we always curse,
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Because wherever you have a crabgrass, you have a whole little forest of crabgrasses. There's that oxalis, sour sorrel. A lot of people call this a clover. It's not a clover. It's in a separate family. The clover's in the pea family. This one's in its own family, the oxalis family. And people pull it up and go, I took it out and it keeps coming back. This is a perennial. It sometimes acts as a summer annual in that it germinates in the summer and might not get big enough to be spreading by fall. But when you pull it up, it's got a thin white root going off in a couple directions that'll break off rather easily. You got to loosen the soil all around it if you want to take those runners out, because the runners are going to come back up again. But all these plants, like burnweed, is interesting to me that it's something that populates barren, fire devastated areas. This one I learned something about this week. I was walking through the garage and I looked out the back garage door and I saw this guy. Can you see him there by the leg of the chair? I saw this guy. It was the motion that caught my eye, because he was jumping. He would jump forward and come back, jump forward and come back, jump forward and come back. I go, what are you doing? So I watched him for a while, And can you see what's right there? And I think I caught him. He was jumping up, grabbing the flower seed stalk at this point of the oxalis, and then pulling back on it like you would strip the peas out of a pea pod. He was eating the seeds of the oxalis. The oxalis is a native, it belongs here. The bird is a native, it belongs here. And he's figured out that that's a place where he can get food. So I said, I'll be darned. There's so many places where the wildlife in our garden can entertain itself, feed itself, house itself, and we put them there. We have to spend our time trying to keep them there.
They
So
never cease to amaze.
no.
Never.
Well, I was crawling along the roadside. Our garden goes right out to the road. You've seen pictures of it. And the only time I can work weeding that edge, which of course gets all the blown in grass stuff from people going by, lawns that have just been mowed and dragging the seeds along with them. The only time I can do that edge is early Sunday morning before traffic starts. And I put a block at either end of the lot. A wheelbarrow at one end and orange buckets at the other end to tell people, swerve, please. There's a woman crawling on the ground here. So I'm crawling along weeding, and I got to this part where I looked at and I saw the swamp milkweed leaves. I said, oh, we don't need swamp milkweed 2 inches from the edge of the road. That's not a good idea. You'll fall in the road. And then there's dill that I let come up because we like the black swallowtails to have a place for their caterpillars to eat. So I was reaching to pull out the swamp milkweed, angled my head up a little bit and saw this guy, a monarch caterpillar on there. I said, well, I'll be darned. There you are. There you are taking advantage of our stuff. And I looked, since I was looking up, I looked at the dill. There was not a single leaf on any of the dill. All they had were stalks and flowers. So despite the fact that it's right out there where the cars are going by, to have a little bit of habitat is a place where they go. And I was feeling so good. I said, I think we've done it, Steve. We managed
Yep.
to get the wildlife in and give them places to live. And while I was thinking that, a hummingbird buzzed by over top of my head. So happy week, very happy week.
Yeah. They were very hungry caterpillars.
Yeah. And of course, Steve is out taking pictures and realizing, where is this? I'm looking to see this.
That's along the side near the Alaska,
Ah, okay.
the fall cypress.
Yeah, yeah. This is the edge of our house, and this is a hole of somebody who lives over there. I guess we have a chipmunk back again, because I haven't seen him yet, but I've seen the holes. But right there, Steve found where we thought we've seen it before. Oh, that's the hole again. That's probably a deer track. It's pretty triangular and deep on the toe. They have a regular route that they follow through the yard. Now, they so far have not done what we would call a lot of damage. Maybe
No.
we have so much to eat. Same thing with Michelle's 2.5 acre garden yesterday. She has so much out there that she doesn't notice too much. Yep, they've been overeating some of the hostas and some of the dahlias, but they have a regular path that they follow. So we let the sunflowers come up along there and let them eat those. Plant of the week. Some contenders. Golden satin grass is so pretty. And someone asked a while ago about it growing in the sun. And I said, I think it burns in the sun. Well, this is at Janet's house, another Janet. And it's in the full sun. And it's
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it gets regular irrigation. Probably my distinction is that if it's not irrigated, it's going to it'll burn. But isn't that pretty stuff? I call them Shih Tzus.
It seems a little bit lighter in color, like it's bleached a little bit being in the sun, but still they're beautiful
Could be.
and seem to be growing quite well.
And if you are ever concerned about how to say the name, this is named for Mount Hakone in Japan. So it's Hakone Cloa macra. And this one is Oreo variegata, golden variegated. There's also one that's all gold. It's a little taller and the leaf is all gold. And then there's all green, which is quite nice, the straight species. But that's just a contender. Another contender is pokeweed. Because right now at Michelle's garden last night, everybody asked, what is that tree back there? Because it's a good 8 feet tall with these dangling flowers on it. And that's pokeweed. That's our native poke, as in poke salad. It is toxic, especially the berries. The toxins are concentrated in the berries, but not for birds. The birds love these, and I would love to grow poke regularly just for the cedar waxwings to come through and take the berries.
I'd be willing to bet that big one gets 100 cedar waxwings if they come in.
Yeah, but
Oh.
I dug them out now because they
I meant the big one at the other garden you were talking about.
right, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
ours, I tried to leave ours, but every year there were hundreds of new pokes, and the root
yeah.
is deep. Imagine in 1 year, the 1 year seedlings have a root as big as a big carrot, straight down, shaped like a carrot. And as they get older, that root stays the same shape but changes depth. So it's like a carrot.
And broadens too.
Yeah, when I'm digging them out, sometimes the top of the carrot is a foot across and they're really hard to get out. But poke is looking spectacular now. And in Europe, they love our poke. It's an ornamental plant in European gardens. I really wanted to feature turtle head because I just love turtle head. I like looking at, see that one looks like a turtle head from the side. There's the jaw and there's the head. Um, but this year, even the ones that are getting more moisture and a little more shade in our garden, fried a couple of times. See the hanging leaves in there? And are not blooming lustily. They're blooming a little bit later. And I don't think they're going to hold up well in the area that's very dry and very shady, where normally they would look pretty good. They are not going to have very many flowers. They're only what, half the height, Steve?
Oh, if that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not turtle head. That's just a contender I had to throw out. And this one is curly chives. I like curly chives. These are right by the road. If we moved the screen a little bit, the road would be going by right down here. Um, and I thought I'd try them and see whether they can be rolled over by cars and stuff. And they get rolled over occasionally, and they seem to be doing okay. Curly because the leaves have a curl, a twist to them. And this is not a chives that spreads itself all over. You will get a few seedlings, but not like garlic chives or regular culinary chives. And they bloom so late. They're so good for our pollinator garden because they wait until almost September to bloom. There is one that's called this one is Allium senescens curly chives. There's also blue curly chives, Allium senescens glaucum, where the foliage is quite blue. They're beautiful plants, but it ended up just being,
Even not in bloom. Even when they're not in bloom.
yeah, the foliage is the first thing that I ever saw on them was foliage only in June. I went, whatever that is, that's the most beautiful foliage I've ever seen. Um,
Jocelyn is asking, does turtlehead need shade?
yes, it
It-
either needs shade or it needs to be
a
constantly
lot of them.
well drained. So it's because you can grow it in a regular garden, but if you dry it out in the sun, it's going to scorch.
And Jocelyn said the deer have eaten every flower on her turtlehead.
Yeah, the groundhog likes to eat turtlehead too. We had in our old house a wet ditch, and I put turtlehead in it, thinking this is good. It's a native plant. I'll put it here, and we'll get the Baltimore checker spot. I think it's a Baltimore checker spot butterfly lays its eggs on turtlehead. I said, good, we'll get that. So I planted it, and the groundhog ate it all the time. Um, but it also never got any caterpillars on it. I said, oh. But I bought a whole flat of little bitty ones to put at a client's place that was good for turtlehead. I put them all in, and Dorothy called and said, something's chewed them all off. I went and looked, and sure enough, I thought, sure enough, the groundhog's eaten yours too. But I got there and found out, no, they were loaded with Baltimore checker spot butterfly caterpillars, and they had eaten them all off. So that's the way that things go. What we decided, well, Steve pressed for it, and he's right. This is the week for the sedums. Sedum Autumn Joy, which remains the best. Um, and people, oops, I didn't even spell autumn right. Autumn Joy has become kind of a generic name. People call everything Autumn Joy, and they're not. They're wrong. Autumn Joy is very different from the rest.
There actually may be very few original autumn joys out there.
Yeah, and if they look like this, and they're turning that salmony color of pink, and are tight clusters, that's probably Autumn Joy and standing up straight.
And stand up through everything.
Yeah, this one is probably Rosy Glow. Rosy Glow. No, that's not the right
Ooh,
name.
there's so many shades now.
Yeah,
They're plants.
Carmen.
No.
I think this one's Carmen or Meteor.
Yeah.
But Cedar Autumn Joy not only has the that color flower and a nice seed head too, but it stands up even in the winter time. Others that are the lighter color, they're interesting enough. This one, where it's sitting and probably there's some leakage going on in the irrigation valve box here. They don't like being overly wet, not at all. And they can get mildew and stunted when they're in a place like that. But there are also purple leaf types. We have one called, Back in Black that we like
Back
a
in
lot.
black, yeah.
Back in Black that we like a lot. There are also variegated ones, which, like all mutants, like the dwarf Alberta spruce we talked about last week, they can revert, and you got to take that reversion out, but they're worth having. So this is, I think, Carmen or Meteor. See, they're not as dense a cluster of stems
And you could tell they're already starting to open up a little bit.
yeah,
They're
yeah, but they are.
old Autumn Joy, the original plant, an old perennial 3, 4 years old will start opening up anyway, but I'm just Autumn
None.
Joy seems to be the best.
Yeah. The walkway from the sidewalk up to the house where I grew up as a kid was lined on both sides with Cedar Autumn Joy that had been planted in the late 20s and was there in the 50s when I was playing with it. It's a
Yeah.
good long-lived plant. Whoops, going the wrong way. Are there any questions, Steve, before we move on?
Let's see. There have been comments on some Margie's turtle heads are gorgeous, lots of blooms, 5x4. And then she said in the shade, it's in the shade and the drain pipe separated, so every time it rains, the garden gets soaked. RK is asking, I missed my mid-August fertilizing of my roses. Do you think it's still too late? Do you think it's too late to do so?
Well, if we've got two rosarians on the list, members of Rose Society, they will have two different answers to that. I'm going to side with the ones that say no. Go ahead and fertilize them. One more time isn't going to hurt. For the most part, we cut roses back hard anyway. If they're tea roses or well, I cut all roses back as much as I can cut them back. And so if they get some extra growth, extra leaf or whatever, it's not going to hurt them. But they are greedy. That's not a good word. Heavy feeders. They like they like a lot of extra nutrient and they grow really fast. So why not give them a little bit more? I got to cut this out of there, Steve. It's such a pretty color, but this is
Yeah.
sucker coming off the root of our locust, and we can't have another tree. We got enough trees on the property.
Yeah. Trees has a hand
Oh,
raised.
hey, trees, go.
I was just wondering, you said that you cut all roses back hard, like to the ground hard, or what do you mean?
Hard as I can cut them. The tea roses I can cut all the way to the ground because they're going to bloom on new wood and bloom better on younger new wood. The ground cover roses, the carpet roses, I cut all old stems all the way out to keep only new stems. And even those I shorten. On the old roses, I'm always taking out old stems and I cut them all the way to the ground. So I cut them as hard as I can cut them. I try to let roses have as much new foliage and new canes as possible. They're just more vigorous on those than they are on anything else.
Thank you.
Sure.
Then that is it.
Okay, we did plant of the week, and I think we had a question from Margie, which made me think of plant of the millennia. Our life with bindweed would be a good title for a book that Steve and I could put together. This is bindweed. This is probably hedge bindweed. There are a couple of different species of bindweed. They're all nasty. And this is in Margie Hopkins' Garden Club's community garden area growing along the edge. And it is as bad. It is a herbaceous climber. So it's going to die to the ground and come back up from the ground each year. But it's as bad as wisteria and kudzu in terms of covering over plants and smothering them, shading them out so that they end up dying. It's also unsightly. It's a native, but we don't have to love all natives, do we?
No.
It's the one that people think of as the wild morning glory. And it is
Seen a lot of nice shrubs that are blooming white, even though they're evergreen.
Yeah, yeah.
because they have
Shiny.
so many. And
Hedge bind, field bindweed is well, this has a smaller, quite a bit smaller leaf because I've been beating it up and it's beginning to starve. I've got the fork in the ground, popping it up right there. But it climbs around more horizontally than over bushes. But they all have long roots that creep, and all along the root can come up from that root that's from that runner. One of the ones that people sometimes send to me and go, "Oh no, I have that bindweed you said is so terrible." Well, bindweed has a morning glory type flower on it. Even the hedge and field bindweeds, it's a smaller flower, but they've still got a morning glory flower on it. And they have a leaf that has a blunt rounded tip
yep.
and the flares on the side. Whereas this is more of a heart-shaped leaf on buckwheat, and the flower, that's the flower. Just this little tiny thing. Don't worry about buckwheat. It's an annual. It's also native.
Breathe a sigh of relief.
Yeah. It's when I see it climb, because it climbs on things and it'll pop up through the garden. I go, oh
Yep.
no, 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 not bindweed. So don't worry too much about buckwheat. But we've had bindweed in our gardens, our own garden and our clients' gardens, pretty much all 40 years. I went looking for pictures of bindweed so that I could show you the way the root grows, like so. That's great bindweed. And this, you might say, oh, look at that root. Here, this is the end it came up from. It came up from this piece, grew out.
That's below ground. The rest of it.
Right. And what this is a stem. This is a below ground stem. The roots, the actual roots that are feeding this growth, and you can see a root growing here from a part of the stem that was underground. It can be 5, 6 feet down and be a big root with a lot of starch stored that has a lot of energy to come back. So if you try to smother it or kill it by starving it, breaking it off every time you see it, it takes years. We've had when I went looking for the pictures, and my pictures are organized by date and they indicate what garden they were taken in. I have pictures in Mildred's garden from 2010 with bindweed, from 2014 with bindweed, from 2022 with bindweed, in Steve's mom's garden from the 1990s, all into the 2000s, from clients' gardens. I've never beaten it. I've only gotten it beaten back to a point where I can say, if I go to that place every 2 or 3 weeks and pluck out anything I see, I think I've got it done.
Just when you think you've got it beat, it pops up somewhere.
Yeah,
And then once you find one, you see two more and you go, what the heck?
yeah, yeah. I made the
Yeah.
mistake of crowing to Steve earlier this year. I said, I think I've got it. I said, I've got it down to one place. It was all along a good 40,
Careful.
it was a good 40-foot run all along the edge of our property. Um, and over all the bushes, I had close to 2 truckloads of bindweed tops that I pulled out that first year. And I've been at it ever since, taking out everything that comes up. And I thought I'd gotten it down to just one place at the edge of our yard and Jason's yard where it's embedded underneath his lawn. So it keeps coming up into the garden there. I told Steve, I said, I think I've got it. Well, then I waited 6 weeks and went back there and
Yeah.
I had bindweed going 12 feet out. So Margie, with your bindweed in the community garden, I tell people have a no plant zone, a space 2 or 3 feet wide that you can walk along a fence line if it's coming from the neighbor's property or it's adjacent to your property as well, because that root can travel a long way and come up into your garden. But if you have a space that you can walk through and dig or pull anything that shows up so that you can prevent it from going further into your yard, that's about all that I can say that you can do, unless you can convince the neighbor to also beat it up. Or convince the neighbor that it's okay for you to be jumping the fence and working on their side of the line. Our neighbor has told me that it's fine with him if I work on his side. So sometimes he comes home from work and I'm crawling along his edge of the garden.
Su-
Bindweed.
Suzanne asked the best approach. It's persistence is your best approach for vine weed overall. Even if you use chemicals and smother, you have to be persistently on it.
And this is respect. We have respect for the wildlife that we invited in, and we have to have respect for the plants too. They know what they're doing and they've been doing
Yep.
it for millions of years.
Who says impossible? I try to get the root, but it keeps spreading under plants.
Right, and that's the thing is you've got to know I know that it's centered at the edge of Jason's yard under his lawn and in this juniper. It probably came in originally with the juniper.
Yep.
We've got it back to that point. At Steve's mom's house, it would come under the sidewalk and pop up at two places. And I knew that if I went to those two places and killed it before it went further into the garden, I could keep it from getting into plants. But you have to just try to think like the plant and stay up with it. I have told people though to move. I remember telling Julie, who gardened with us at the zoo, I said, I think you should just get another house because she had bindweed coming in from three sides, from the neighbor behind
Ooh.
her and the neighbor on either side. And unless you got everybody coordinated there, including the ones that fit in the corners, you're just not going to do it. Other weeds, right now, it drives me crazy to see ragweed coming up, because a lot of people are allergic to it. It's an annual, but it's going to drop a gazillion seeds in the garden.
It's wind pollinated, not insect pollinated.
Yeah. And then there's the thistles. The birds like the thistle seeds, but I'm not keen on the thistles. Canada thistle is not Canadian, it is Eurasian. It just had managed to travel so far over from the colonies that the probably the Vikings started on the Canadian fishing banks areas. It had traveled so far already into the Great Lakes that the Jesuits and other people who were reporting on plants that were native called it Canadian thistle, like it belonged here. Um, Sow thistle, all the thistles that run. And what happens if you get them when they first get into the garden, they're coming in on a runner that's maybe, what is that, 2.5 inches deep?
Mm-hmm.
Once they become established, then this runner dives down and there you get a second layer of roots and sometimes a third layer of roots. So if you leave them there for longer, you get more roots coming in, but they come in from the edge. If you start it out clean, they come in from the edge and you can keep them out at the edge if you do that fairly regularly or have a barrier that's deep enough to keep them out. This one is another one that I would tell people to move if they have a bunch of it in. We only have it here and there. It's all over in the neighborhood, but this is false helleborine. Epipactus is the genus name, but it is an orchid, a terrestrial orchid that has these roots that remind me of the star-nosed mole with his nose, that are often very deep, are often 6, 7 inches deep. And if you don't loosen and get all of those pieces, they come back up again. Because it's all over in our neighborhood, I see it in various places, and in some places it's as thick as Solomon's seal. The seed is dust fine like other orchids, and it blows real easily. So I'm going to have to be watching for that all the time. It's just the way it goes with weeds. Same thing with poison ivy. We live in quite near a woods. Poison ivy is native in the woods. There's the three leaflets. Yesterday, some people were avoiding an area in the garden that we were walking in because it looked like poison ivy. The leaflets look just like that, but there's one on either side of each stem. If the stem is here, and this is a three leaflets. If there's another leaflet coming directly on the opposite side of it, that's a box elder tree. Poison ivy has one leaf on one side, then one leaf on the other side, then one leaf on the other side. They're alternate. So we were able to pull that out and get it out of the way. Weeds is one of our free seminars. I don't know if everyone here has heard us say that you can get a list of all of our webinars. Just go to our webinars and sponsorship page and click on the catalog of all of our webinars, and you can pull up one that has descriptions of each talk or just the title. They're separated by category: native and ecological topics, pest topics, planting topics, and they tell you what date we ran them, what webinar number they are in case you're keeping track of that, what season they were in, and then whether they are F in the free library or SL in the subscribers library. If subscribers are able to look at all of them, but many of them we've made free. And weeds, to know them is to beat them, was our number 5 webinar back in 2020 when the COVID mess started us up doing this, and it's in the free library. So if you wanted to go and look at weeds, and get some names to use to curse your own weeds, get that list. It's just a PDF you can download.
Therese was saying, I have been trying to pull and starve out common milkweed. Am I kidding myself? This is after trying to dig out a 12 by 12 sections, still coming up everywhere.
It took us 2 years at my son's house. We let the milkweed come up because milkweed showed up in the garden. And we had just been teaching the kids about wildlife in the garden. And I thought, oh, can't take this out now. And by the end of the first year, it had spread 6 feet in all directions. It's coming
Yeah.
up on the lawn, coming up all over the place. And I told Corey when they were doing some renovation on the house and had to dig that area out, I said, good, that'll give us some help. We'll dig out that soil. So they dug out that soil, putting in an egress window, or some of that soil. Of course, they put it back again with all the pieces of roots. But we then smothered that bed, that whole area where it was. And we asked our son, I said, every week, every couple of weeks, you have to walk through here and pluck every bit of green you see because there are pieces still left in there. And it took 2 whole growing seasons until this year, after some popped up in May, and then we haven't seen any since then, even in the
Yep.
lawn. We said, okay, I think we've got it. But that's all we can say is we think we've got it. I never got it out of our old garden once I put it in, I asked it in, and then I tried to take it out, and there were always a few pieces coming back. But there is hope if you can identify the area that's it's most coming from, which is probably the area where it first started. It's got the most roots and runners there, and smother that area and patrol all the areas around it. But that's the only way we found to do it.
Another persistent one. Deb wants to go back to roses. I
Uh-huh.
have I have easy care rose bushes and have been told that they are not a long-lasting shrub. I've had mine for about 10 years and they seem to be getting weaker and less hardy every year. What's our experience with them, and would you also cut them back hard if they are not doing well?
I'm not familiar with the variety Easy Care. There are a number of different low growing roses that have names like Carefree Wonder, Carefree Beauty, and maybe it's those. They are, I've not thought of them as short-lived plants, and I do cut them. But I also have seen in at least one garden locally where they were all infected with rosette virus, and I told the client to watch them, and she did watch them, and they developed more and more symptoms, so she took them out. So they're just as susceptible to the rose problems that the other roses are. But you can cut them back hard if they're weak. When you cut back a weak plant, unless you change what made it weak in the first place, they're probably going to come back weak. So I'm not sure. Maybe you can send us some pictures of what they look like so that we can see what the symptoms are and help you out with that. Pictures are great. Pictures tell us a whole lot, and they're easy to send now, much easier than in the old days. This is a great time of year for pruning to keep a woody plant small. End of August, when the heat breaks. The idea is, and we'll use Janet's weeping spruce as an example. She calls it Cousin It. It's a good name, don't you think? She wants to keep it there. She's arranged everything so that looking out her kitchen window, she sees this miniature settee and chairs in front of it. She wants it to stay that size, and that means that you have to cut it. Every year you're going to have to prune it. Plants in the springtime give a lot of their stored starch up and put it into the buds that are waiting to grow for this year and push out into those buds and the developing needles and leaves as they get old enough, replenish the starch that came from the wood and the roots, and then start banking extra starch. Most plants make enough starch to replace everything that they have this year, duplicate it, and have a little set aside for in case something happens at the beginning of the year. So they've got some reserves. If you let the plant grow until about now, it's had plenty of time to replenish the starch that it spent in the spring, coming back and enough to become larger. If you leave the leaves on it, it's going to have 2 more months to continue to store more starch. So if you want to keep it small, then you want to keep it a little bit hungry and you want to cut some of the foliage off of it so that there's less photosynthesis going on. So this is a good time to cut and direct the growth. And in Janet's case, that means taking off pieces where you say, I have 3 pieces coming out to the side here. This one's coming out the farthest. I might take this one all the way back to a side branch back here where it'll have a couple years to grow. When I say a couple years, I mean that there's 1 year's growth. That section or that section right there, they have a different color wood. It starts out green and becomes honey colored by the end of the year. That's 1 year's growth. So if I want to cut it back and not have to worry about cutting it again, I should cut it back by a couple years growth. So if I cut this branch back so to leave this one as the new branch, as the new end, it can grow for 1, 2, 3 years before it's out further. And
At the current growth rate.
at the current growth rate. And when people say, well, how do you figure out what to do? I tell them start at the top. The top grows fastest, cut the top, and then work down a side, cutting equally. If you cut the top back by 8 or 10 inches, then cut the sides back by 8 or 10 inches or 6 or 8 inches, but something, then rotate, move to the side, start at the top and cut down. You'll find that you can keep the shape of the plant then because you're paying attention to where the branches point and what they're doing. But you don't want it to get big because that's a dwarf spruce right there, bellying out over the walkway at Hidden Lake Gardens in the dwarf conifer collection. That is a dwarf spruce. I think of dwarf conifers as being trees laying on their side. If you let them grow, they get to be huge.
That is a golden mops.
Well, that's golden mops. Yep.
Yeah. And that rock, when I first took a picture, Janet, move your hand up to the second level, right there. That's where it was planted at.
And yeah, there was space to walk between the rock and the outer edges of the
Yep.
Because
shrub. The rock doesn't shrink or grow.
Right. At any rate, you want to keep things small. Now is a great time to cut.
Yep.
Cutting once they start growing in the spring causes them to branch and changes the shape. There's our chickadee on the copper. I was explaining before we got started officially that we have our water for our pond. The pump is in the pond and it pumps the water up through this tube. We have a old Japanese maple branch that it hangs on. And we wanted the water to fall down about 5 feet into the pond, but it splashes too much that way coming straight down. So I made a little copper pot to stop it and spread the water out. And the birds like to drink upstream rather than downstream. So they all land there. It's fun watching.
The little guys.
The little guys, yeah. I did see a blue jay try. I think it must have been one of the young blue jays, but they couldn't hang on.
Yeah. Well, a young blue jay tries almost everything. They're so silly.
They're smart. They're learning that way.
Yep.
Okay, best pruning practice. If you notice the plant's natural growth habit, you can do so much more pruning much more easily. And now is a good time of year to look at the things that repeat bloom. Weigelia, for instance, repeats bloom. There's a stem of the Weigelia from not quite ground level all the way up to its current end. The new wood, whoops, didn't mean to do that yet. The new wood is a light brown. The old wood has been starting to get some gray bark on it. So all of that is new wood. These shoots coming up are new wood. What happened was the plant bloomed first on this stem that was new and unbranched last year. It had no branches on it, and the flowers were right there. See where the seed pods are? There, 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 there. It bloomed there in May and June. Then it grew new side branches, which bloomed at their tips. Or if they're a sturdy enough branch, thick enough branch, they bloomed in a couple of places. So the second bloom is coming on new wood. That taught me to look at the Weigelia. These are Weigelia at the garden that we had at the Detroit Zoo. Currently now there's a wolf exhibit back here. It's been changed around. But these Weigelia are still there. What we would do every year is we would leave we would prune them in the spring. Sometimes the rabbits helped us. We would prune them in the spring to take out the old branched wood. Since I know that unbranched wood is going to bloom this year and it's going to grow quite a bit, and we don't want to have them overcome the fence and the stones, we wanted to keep them kind of small. Every spring we had volunteers go in and cut out these little spots where they lopped out any big branch that had branches. We left only, see, their straight sticks. And those leafed out very quickly and they grow very fast so that by the end of May, that's them. They've extended their branches and now all those branches are going to bloom. Now those would get just what you saw there. Those side branches would develop on them, and that's going to be the second bloom. We would, after they bloomed the first time, we would take all of the branches that bloomed out because from the bottom, new branches were growing, that new wood growing up, that if I cut it back, that means taking out a lot of branches. And we did that with the whole hedge. Then the second bloom is more controlled, more contained. We can let those bloom, and those are the ones that we're going to cut out next spring. So we're literally letting parts of the Weigelia grow for only about 6 months and then taking them out because it's wood.
Otherwise, it would be a beast of a shrub.
Oh, huge, huge, huge. We have one Weigelia of this type by our garage, and it's what, 12 feet across, Steve? Easily.
Oh, I don't know how big it would grow. I really don't.
Yeah.
I mean, even in botanic gardens, I think they cut them sometimes. Back.
But the second bloom is never as impressive as the first bloom. It's
No.
not, but there are flowers, and if you've got hummingbirds, they like it.
Hummingbirds love them just as much as the first bloom. In fact, they're liable to be around more for the second bloom than they were for the first bloom,
Right,
depending
because
on how early it
they
came.
need more stuff then. Okay.
Yep.
So, and then we're right back after we've cut them back and let them bloom. We're right back to the next spring doing it all over again. And if you've got a Weigelia that's been growing for a while, you can do what Ginger and I did to hers. I said, okay, Ginger, let's get this one under control. So we took out all the old wood right then. Forget it. Don't worry about what the cycle is. We'll just get rid of the old wood and let it grow. Or like ours, when we moved in, it looked like this. Now it's it's much wider. It's out to here.
Oh,
Somebody had been sharing it. I said, okay, just cut it down and start over. So I just cut it out. Didn't matter what time of year. The next spring, this is what happened. And like I told you, it's now 12 feet across. So you can start anytime, you can take out anytime, but if you pay attention to how the plant is growing, you'll be much happier, I think, with what you end up seeing. That's 1 year's growth there within the blue lines. That's 1 year's growth after I cut it back from what you see up there. What happened to that mower, Steve? Is that the one that went over to Corey's house?
no. I don't think it worked. I think it did go over for a little bit, but
I don't remember having a lot riding mower.
no.
Are there questions?
Nothing right now. Deb will send us pics of the rose bush. Suzanne asked, does common milkweed spread by root? And I answered in chat, yes, and seed too.
Yep.
Nancy has a hand up.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Hi.
Hi.
So, with the discussion you had either last week or the week before regarding putting fertilizer into a weed killer container, and there's residual weed killer in the plastic container as you're spraying?
There can be, yes.
There can be. So, does that also apply to the vinegar, salt, Dawn dish soap solution that people will use? Will that be a residual in the same containers?
There can be a residual of anything in a container if that be rinsed pretty thoroughly. Most of the time, it's better to have a container that you label that's for herbicides separate from a container that's for insecticides separate than one from fertilizers, just to make sure that you don't mix them up. But you can rinse them thoroughly and be okay. But yeah,
Okay.
we've seen terrible things happen when
Okay.
fertilizer
Yep.
got mixed into a herbicide container.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Sure.
You're welcome. That's it for right now.
Okay, then we'll keep
Got
going.
about 10 minutes.
All right. lilac and borers we've been hearing about again this week. Terry sent in a picture. She said, my lilac is pale on one side and the leaves are not looking good. Well, it doesn't have a disease. Is it a goner? I said, I've seen a lot worse than that. There's our friend Teresa's. And once they're weakened, then everything infects their leaves. If they're mildew prone, they're going to get mildew, they're going to get leaf spot, they're going to get scorch. What happens to most lilacs, and most of the time when they look like Terry's, I'm going to tell them look for borers. This is a clearwing moth. It might not look like a moth, but it's a moth, fuzzy antennas, and it lays its eggs on weak spots in the trunk of lilacs. This is a tree lilac or ash. The youngsters hatch, chew in, and then chew into the wood, and they do a lot of destruction inside the plant. Then the next spring they chew their way out through a bigger hole, exit holes. And when you look on the inside, they are taking a lot out of the inside of the plant. So this has been hosting borers for quite a while, but it's still got a couple of branches that are lively, and it's still making some new shoots at the bottom. There's hope for it. There's hope for yours, Terry, because yours is better off than that.
Yep.
Just a couple of weeks ago, Diane sent in one of the stump that she took out and said, there, see, I see the borer holes you're talking about, Janet. See the borer exit holes there and there and down there? They're about as big as a number 2 pencil. And usually they're down low, and the tree will do this. See the suckers that came from below the damage? The tree is saying, hey, I got to grow from below the damage where I've got good wood. So if you're looking at an old lilac, look for where the borer holes are. And sometimes that damage, because the moths will lay their eggs near damage, so they keep coming to the same place, and you'll get this kind of beat up crotch. And crotches are their usual place. Go below that when you cut your lilac back to get it to regrow. Cut below any borer damage that you can find. And if you cut even at ground level and you see there's borer holes in the stump, then you definitely need to maybe mound some soil up to let the new suckers that are coming out get their own roots. But it's really tough to kill a lilac completely, even if the borers have been in it a lot. So there's hope for all of them. They will come back.
Robin says she saw a giant praying mantis and a giant leopard moth caterpillar in her.
Oh, that's neat. I just love fun.
Yep.
I saw a neat red and white spider that I was trying to take a picture of as it crawled out of the yard waste bin that I was filling, and crawled around my leg. Just because it's so cool to see them. Damage to a tree's trunk. We talked last week about one that, let's watch it, or maybe have an arborist look and see how much good wood it has, because a big tree falling from a weak spot in the trunk can be a problem. But things that are kept small plants pose a lot less danger. So Julie sent in these. She said, this is the birch, the weeping birch by my pond, and I'm really worried about it. And look how much damage there is. Well, there's damage, but do you see the resin-filled area out here? That's called the containment wall. The tree is doing a pretty good job of containing that damage and still has live cambium most of the way around.
Well, it also looks like the damage is on the upper side and not the lower side. So the chances are that where that is, that would be stronger, the strongest wood that they would have. It might be able to last for longer than you would anticipate seeing that much damage.
That's right. And especially since this is where hers is. She has the pond here, and she's been keeping it small. This is 10 years ago. You can see the difference in the size of the trunk.
Yeah.
And even 10 years ago, that side, birches are thin-barked plants, and just like the Japanese maples, they can be susceptible to damage in the wintertime. So that part that was most reflective of the heat on a winter afternoon and most damaged by the sudden cold at sunset was damaged. You might be able to see a bit of peeling bark back here already. So the damage has been there for a long time, but she's keeping this plant small, so there's not going to be a lot of weight on that anyway, and it'll probably be okay. Same thing she has a tree-form dwarf lilac. So dwarf lilac grafted onto a tree lilac trunk. And she said, look at it, it's rotting out in the middle. said, well, I've got a picture of it from 15 years ago when you used to just shear it all the time. And then we went in and we took out because that shearing was causing a buildup of dead wood inside. Just like other plants, the shearing was keeping all of the foliage on the outside edge and shading everything out on the inside. So we opened it up and look at it back then, Julie. I said, do you see where big branches had died on the inside? Here, here, and long ago, here and here. That's where that started. And as long as you keep this small, so there's not a lot of weight on it, it's going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to bloom. Eventually, it may split in two, but that's down the road. That's not a dangerous plant. It's one that it could have had a happier young youth and been better off. And she also asked, can I let the suckers grow? That's a tree lilac coming up from those roots. And a tree lilac is a lot bigger than a dwarf bush lilac grafted.
Different, yeah,
Yeah, so you don't want to.
different bark, different flower.
Yeah, it's like letting replacing boxwood came up again this week 3 times. This is a boxwood. These are variegated boxwoods. And I looked at them and said, I think you need to treat those boxwoods because that kind of look, do you see the gray brown look here? Here?
The beginning.
Something's been eating. They've been eating whole leaves and part of leaves, and there's webbing in there. That's almost certainly box tree moth damage. And where this might have been 10 caterpillars working, next year there's going to be 100 caterpillars working, and they're going to strip that plant all the way down.
By boxwood.
And then they'll start scraping off the bark too. And there's no getting around the fact that they're here. They're going to be around. And if you want to keep your boxwood, you're going to have to treat your boxwood for insect problems every year, one way or another. So I've been talking to people about replacements for boxwoods and realized that so far we've talked only about shrubs, but many perennials can fill in for boxwood. Most of the time when we put in boxwood, we're looking for something that's 3 feet or so, just a nice little mounded thing. What a great use for storm cloud blue star, storm cloud Amsonia tabernae montana. I couldn't find a picture of it because I got so upset with it. This is a Amsonia that has runners, but it's short. You can see maybe how short it is in the picture where I could find a little bit of it. It blooms a light blue color. And in the case of one of my questioners, she has her boxwood all around a patio. So the patio is on one edge of the hedge, and on the other end of the hedge, it's all mowed. So it doesn't matter if this wants to try to run out of the hedge. You can just plant that whole hedge and it'll fill up with Amsonia blue star, which looks nice in the winter and has a nice fall color too. Or dwarf goat's beard. This is Aruncus othusifolius, the species. Oops, I forgot an O in there too. But this will cross with the full-sized goat's beard. And there's one called Misty Lace that I like a lot that has the shorter stems. So this guy is about 15 inches, maybe 30 inches tall in bloom. And you can either cut the flowers off after they bloom, which is what we've done here, or you can leave them up. We leave ours up, and even in the wintertime, there's a nice appearance. It gives you that same low hedge effect. Or you can use the full-size one if you want a 4 or 5 foot hedge. Another option is something like the ironweed called iron butterfly. Most of the ironweeds are very big. They go with cut plant as 5, 6, 8 feet tall plants. Iron butterfly, Vernonia lettermanii, is about 3 feet high, sometimes 4 feet high. And it blooms, it's getting ready to bloom now, but it's not going to be in color until sometime, maybe the 3rd week of September. But it's got pretty foliage, and it grows like along the lines of a peony. The first year it goes in, you can see from the brick in the background, it's only going to be a foot tall maybe. The next year it'll be 2 feet tall. Then it'll hit its stride. Pretty foliage that stays upright and rather interesting in the wintertime. And once it's full grown, then it's contained like the miscanthus grass. It'll get to be a bigger clump around, but it won't run or spread out of hand. So you can use these other things for boxwood replacements. Or if you want to go with woody plants, I talked about spirea and people saying, oh, I want something native. If I'm going to take out the boxwood, I want to go native. This is birch leaf spirea. And I noticed that Proven Winners has a gold form birch leaf spirea. Now, I think birch leaf spirea has kind of gold leaves anyway, but it is kind of one of the things that the Proven Winners group does is they take a plant and give it a name and charge a little more for it. Are there questions?
Yeah, please remind us how to treat the boxwood.
They are the boxwood tree moth, box tree moth has at least 2 generations a year in Michigan. Sometime in May, the moths will emerge from wherever they spent the winter in cocoon. They'll pupate and come out. They'll lay their eggs, and within a week, the caterpillars are eating your shrubs. So by the middle of May, you should have applied some kind of insecticide. It can be BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, the one that is specific to caterpillars. And the caterpillars that hatch out and get a mouthful of that will not be able to eat and digest anymore, and they'll die. Works best on youngsters, so you put it on early. Or you can use a systemic insecticide. And those of you who've been here for a while, you know that we don't truck with systemics if we can help it, because you put those on the ground, it's absorbed in through the roots, and the whole plant, even the flower parts, become toxic to things like bees and butterflies. I'd rather use something that's specific to caterpillars like BT. And I also don't like to put things on the ground that roots can take up, because those trees back there are taking up that stuff too. So, but you can use a systemic, and whatever you do, you have to remember that there are more than 1 generation each year. So you're going to have one set come through.
That brings, Nancy points out they are eating now and very small.
Right. Good. So now
Now's the time to get them.
that's a 3rd generation. So we do have 3 generations in Michigan. I was hoping
Yep.
that we'd only have 2 because we're colder. Darn. Darn.
Can you use the boxwood treatment as a preventative
It's
if you don't have the borers?
well, no,
No, that has nothing to do with the borers.
it's nothing.
Moth.
No, you can't use the boxwood treatment on. The borers are caterpillars, but they chew only a little bit through the bark and usually through damaged bark, and then they're inside. You can't get them inside.
The systemic can get them, but that's it.
Right, the systemic can. The control for lilac borer is to keep the lilac pruned so that none of your main branches are bigger than about a pool cue. If they're that size, they are not enough to sustain a borer, and they don't get borers laying eggs on them. So pruning is the way to control it. Or I'd have to look up when I was in Dee's yard, because I saw the borers laying eggs then. I think it was the first week of June, but it would be to kill the adults because they're out where you can reach them. And sometimes you can use an oil on the trunk of the lilac, one of the horticultural oils, so that when the youngsters come out, they get oil on their bodies and they can't breathe and they die that way. But you have to have the timing has to be when the eggs are hatching for the oil, or when the adults are flying for an insecticide.
Okay. We don't have, it's after 8 and there's still a couple questions here.
Okay, well, let's do the questions, and I'll save this boldly patterned caterpillar that Carol sent in, because we've got it down to figure it out what it is, but we're still really questioning what it's eating. It's called the cross-striped cabbage worm, but in Carol's garden, it has eaten her roses and beans. So we're a little concerned about what we've got going on here, and it'll be nice to have some time and Brenda's help.
Okay. First of all, Suzanne wanted to know what was that aster planted with. Our I assume it was the big leaf aster, and it's
planted with green and gold chrysogonum, so a native ground cover over here. Dwarf Solomon seal, an Asian form. It's a polygonatum humulus, or low Solomon seal, big root perennial geranium. Those are just ground cover groups.
Okay. Suzanne is also asking, I have a large maple that sprouts dozens of side branches far below the canopy. I remove them every year, but they always return. Is there something I can do to prevent the sprouts?
There's a reason that it's doing it. It's sprouting from below something that must be damaged. There may be there's so many things that can happen to maple. Can you send some pictures of stand back and just take a picture of the whole tree for us? And then if you can take a picture of where the sprouts are coming from, so that we get a feel for where it is, maybe I can come up with some possibilities of what's going on. But something's going on in the canopy above that's causing the tree to build up starch at that point and make suckers at that point. Just like if you put a ribbon around a tree and the tree starts girdling with the ribbon, it'll sucker from right below the ribbon because the starch can't get down to the roots and it builds up there.
Yeah. Margie has got a hand up.
Okay. Go ahead.
Hi. Okay, the Amsonia that I got from the library,
Right.
that is not storm cloud, right?
No, that's not storm cloud. That's the species. And it is the same species, but it's taller and it doesn't run. This one that Tony Avent and somebody, I've forgotten his name, from Michigan found. It's a very strange critter. You
Can
want
I divide it now?
Yes, you can divide Amsonia now, definitely.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
All right. Let's see. Well, did I miss anything? Deb was the one that asked about using boxwood treatment as a preventative if you don't have the borers, but she said, sorry, I misspoke. I am referring to the disease for boxwoods.
Oh, there are systemic there were systemic fungicides. I believe all of those were withdrawn from the market, from the home gardeners market. And if you wanted to put a systemic that would stop the boxwood blight or prevent or help prevent the boxwood blight, I think you'd have to have a professional do that because we can't buy that stuff anymore. And I'm glad the fungicides are bad news to breathe in and to have around. Yeah,
Carol,
like those of us that have been talking about this all last 2, 3 years with the boxwoods, we're just giving up boxwoods. We gave up ash trees, we gave up American elms, chestnuts were given
gave up impatience.
right. And eventually maybe it'll come around, but there are so many thousands of other plants that we can grow that I think we're getting hung up on trying to keep something. The wave of new pests will go through, and like Japanese beetles, like even the emerald ash borer, that the numbers won't be so high, and we might be able to find some other answers. Certainly, there'll be some biological answers that'll show up along the way, but to keep something and knowing that you're going to have to treat it every single year with some kind of chemical is just that's not the fun kind of gardening we want to do.
Yeah. Carol, that photo is largely faster. Yes, it's big leaf aster, not heart-shaped aster.
Right.
Use it.
Aster macrophylla. Yeah.
Yep. And then quickly, Diane, she heard the Amsonia and the goat spear, but what was the third suggestion?
Amsonia goat spirit and ironweed, iron butterfly, Vernonia, iron butterfly.
Ooh, yeah. All right. I think that's it for what's in chat. No hands up currently.
Well, thank you all for being here tonight. It is so fun to talk to people. I had such fun what was I doing? I told you I was doing when I was doing Steve. I got to research conifer moths that eat conifers. I had to look for a moth I'd never heard of before. I had the arboriculture books out. It's fun to do.
Yep. We have our times.
So that's it for this Free for All Friday. We'll be back September 5th. Normally, those of you who are our webinar subscribers know that we have a webinar once a month and at the beginning of the month, but we weren't able to we didn't want to do it on Labor Day weekend, and we weren't able to get the speaker we wanted until the 27th. So our September webinar is September 27th, George Papadallis. We've given him the charge of Forgotten Fall Faces, the best lead color and interest for the garden, and we let him go. I said, you can go, he said perennials. I said, you can go perennials, annuals, woodies, you can go with temperennials. show us what you would do if you wanted to really deck out a garden. And George knows more plants than probably any 10 other growers. He's just such a dedicated horticulturalist. I think you'll enjoy it. And it's not too late to subscribe and join us then live for that September 27th talk. And then you're also into the library where there's 179 other recordings. So we hope that you'll join us either for Free for All Friday next Friday and or for September 27th. Have a nice weekend.
Take care, everybody, and happy Labor Day. Ta ta for now.